Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross from PTCGRadio, and I am back with another video, which I recorded on PTCGO, the official online version of the Pokémon game. Now this time I'm again going to be using my Pyroar Raichu deck, and if you're not familiar with this deck, might I suggest you go back and watch my previous video where I played against Plasma, because I go a little bit into the deck there, and I might not go into that detail here, because I don't want to be just repeating myself for people that have seen the previous video. So, no Litleos unfortunately to start off with, but I get a double Pikachu, so it could be a heck of a lot worse. And I immediately see my opponent putting down a Snorunt. I go second. You will be seeing a lot of me going second as we go through my videos, but that's a moan for another day. Now at this point I'm trying to desperately remember what Glalie does, but of course I remember because I played against a chap playing a Glalie deck a little while ago. And Glalie basically, when active, stops you playing special energy from your hand. Now, this is pretty good against something like Plasma, which relies on special energy, but it's not terribly great against other decks. For me, particularly in my deck, I've obviously got Fire Energy, and I've got Blacksmith, which allows me to put more Fire Energy on using a supporter. But I do have double Colourless Energy, and yeah, so it's a little bit of a pain. Now I did Juniper rather than N there. I could have N'd to, Colress to 5. This early on in the game, I needed just to get myself set up, so I took that risk. I don't think it was the end of the world. I also got a Fire Energy in the discard, which is going to help me with Blacksmith a bit later on. Now you'll see a couple of other cards on my opponent's deck. We've got a Duskull, which is going to evolve into Dusknoir, presumably the Dusknoir which allows him to move all the damage counters around on my field. He's also got a Miltank, which does a bunch of damage if he's got a stage 2 in play. And he's got an Articuno, which I'll talk about in a second. Now he plays an Escape Rope here, and that's a real pain in the neck for me. I cannot give up my Litleo. I don't want to give up, and I'm checking there to see if he can KO a Litleo. And I don't really want to give up my Pikachu because it's got a Muscle Band and it's got an Energy on. But the Litleo is too much. It's too good, quite frankly. And I can always use DCE on Pikachu if he doesn't get the Glalie out, so it has to be done, I'm afraid. So he's got a Dazzle Machine, he gets a Juniper, and I have a look at his discard, there's nothing great in there, but he gets a Glalie out, and now you can see no special energy. But what I'm checking there is the attack. It does 30 damage. And he's got a Muscle Band on, which means it's going to do 50 damage. Now, Pyroar has 100 HP, so that's not actually one-hitting a Pyroar. And there you see how good Fiery Torch can be if you don't have a supporter. The downside, of course, with that is that he's just put 10 damage on with a residual damage from the attack, so now he can one-hit the Pyroar. So, I've got my Raichu with a Muscle Band, I've got 2 bench Pokemon. I'm doing 60. It's not great. Could be worse. Now because he's got a comparatively low damage output, I can get a Reshiram to stall with if I need, and now I can put and that puts me up to 100 damage with the Litleo on the bench, i.e. I'm one-hitting his Glalie. Froslass, I keep saying Glalie, I've said that for the past couple of minutes. I of course mean Froslass, my apologies. So here it's a bit weird, because generally with my deck I want to be killing EXs. And I'm playing against all basics here. Now that Articuno, when it's got a Plasma Energy attached, does something like 80 damage with Auto Paralysis. Now I'm playing a bunch of Escape Rope, like I said in my previous video, because Escape Rope allows me to get around one Pyroar counter, like a Snorlax or a Latias or something like that. So that can help me here, but it's still far from an ideal situation. The thing is, however, Pyroar doesn't take damage from Articuno. Now, Pyroar only blocks damage, so Pyroar will still be paralysed from Articuno, but he's not going to take any damage. What he can do, however, is start spreading. I believe Articuno's got a spread attack, and of course Froslass does a little bit of spreading, so he can spread a bit of damage around. He can then move it around with Dusknoir, and he's going to be able to kind of choose what he wants to KO. So he's managed to hit 2 Colress machines. That means he's got damage on Articuno, and there we see his first attack Blizzard does 10 damage to all of my bench. So you can already see a little bit of a plan forming. Miltank is just a basic that attacks for 1 energy. If he gets Dusknoir out, it's going to do alright. Froslass is good to spread a little bit of damage while slowing your opponent down. And you've got Dusknoir to kind of spread the damage around. And you've got Articuno for auto paralysis. Now, a lot of decks play something like a Virizion, or they play, you know, a bunch of switches. But if they don't, Articuno's amazing. So I hit the Blacksmith there for the 2 fire energy. I get my Pyroar completely up. And I can get the KO there with Raichu Circle Circuit. I could have got the KO with Pyroar, but why put Pyroar into danger? I've got my Pyroar on the bench. I've got a spare Raichu on the bench. He doesn't have a Glalie out, so I can start putting DCEs on there. So it's not the end of the world. Now I see there it's doing 60 damage plus 10 to all the bench. That's going to KO the Raichu, so we would never go for the second attack, because the second attack doesn't do the bench damage, and the first attack, which does do the bench damage, is getting the KO there. It's all good. For him, of course. Now you also notice he's put a Spiritomb down on the bench, and what Spiritomb does, it's got a lovely ability which blocks Ace Specs. Now he's already played his Dowsing Machine. I haven't played an Ace Spec. So now my Dowsing Machine, my computer search is basically off the table. Annoying, because it cuts down the consistency of my deck a little bit. But if you look at how my board's set up, I basically need a DCE and maybe a basic, and I'm pretty much all set here. I've only got 1 DCE in the discard pile, so I've got 3 left. I've got a Pyroar ready to attack. I'll have a Raichu ready to attack. It's all good. One thing to note about Pyroar, of course, is even when it's on the bench, its ability works, so Articuno doesn't do 10 damage to Pyroar. So now that I've got 2 Pyroar out, he's only going to be doing 20 damage total with that first attack, because it won't hit either of the Pyroars, which is kind of cool. So I'm going to take advantage of his Froslass not being out and pop a DCE on Raichu. And then I end myself. Now I've got that Tropical Beach there. And the question is, do I play the Tropical Beach yet? And it's essentially, how in danger am I of being ended, and how much will it help my opponent? Now, I play the Tropical Beach here because at the end of the day, I'm winning, so I'm more likely to be hurt by an N. And because, essentially, as I talked about in my previous video, a lot of the time, especially with this deck, it's can I hit an Escape Rope? Can I hit a Lassonde? So there's plenty of times when I can just basically hang tight with Pyroar and use Tropical Beach. So, I'm going to choose not to do the 90 damage there, I'm going to just do the 60. And the reasoning is, energy is a big concern in this deck, and I'm in no rush to 2-hit KO that particular Articuno. He can kill an energy to retreat it. He's got no other threats on his bench at the moment that I'm particularly worried about. He hasn't got any energy on his Froslass, so he can't attack with Froslass this turn to kill me. So why do I really need to bother with 2-hit KOing when I can conserve my energy and 3-hit KO? I'm not really in a rush to win any faster in this particular game. I just want to get the win. And I know that next turn he's not doing anything good, so I'm in no major hurry here. So, I know my Pyroar's safe. He can still use the first attack, but what it is going to do is pop energy around. It's going to pop 2 damage counters. One on the Reshiram, one on the Raichu. What he does instead is does his auto paralysis attack. Now, he's not really gaining anything here, but he's buying himself a turn. Maybe he can get some energy on the Froslass, maybe he can get the Dusknoir out and get an energy on the Miltank, etc. It just buys him a turn. Now, it doesn't really hurt me, but it buys him a turn, and that can be good. So I don't really do anything that turn. I still like my position better than his, so I'm content just to pass. There's still nothing on his bench that's worrying me, and I've got a Lassonde in hand just in case something is worrying me. So you see he's got the Ultra Ball and the Skylar, so he gets the Dusknoir and the Rare Candy, and we know what's going to happen here. He's going to get the Dusknoir out, and there's very little damage on my field. I think there's 50 total. So maybe he's going to try spreading a little bit here and using the Dusknoir to get some KOs. But really here, Pyroar is a viable attacker against his deck. He's not getting the 1-hit KO, except if he's got 10 damage, which he has. So I suppose he is getting the 1-hit KO. But Pyroar's 1-hitting anything except for his Articuno, which I don't need to 1-hit because I'm invulnerable against it. And Raichu's one-hitting anything but Articuno, which Pyroar's really good against. So I'm keeping up with the prize trade nicely here. I'm not terribly worried. He is hitting for weakness, but really I'm hoping what this game can show is that Pyroar Raichu, if you play it properly, can work against, something other than just Plasma or an all-basic deck. Although admittedly this isn't necessarily a tier 1 deck. So he does use the first attack, he gets a bit of damage down. Now I am going to play a Litleo down, because I fancy having the third Pyroar, and I play a third Pyroar. And now I'm going to play Escape Rope. I don't really want to deal with that Articuno. I could go on and free hit it, but if you look at his bench, there's a Froslass on the bench. And what that Froslass is doing, it's got an energy on, he's going to be able to get the KO on my Pyroar. So, I'm putting a Raichu up, I'm protecting my Pyroar. Unless he's got a Lysandre or a Catcher of his own next turn, and looking at his deck so far, it doesn't appear that he plays it, I'm not terribly worried. Now I do retreat there to the Pyroar, and I'm going to put an energy on that Pyroar, and I'm going to be able to get the KO here. And then I'm going to Lysandre up his Froslass, because I don't want him to put an energy in a Muscle Band and get the KO. So now I'm getting rid of his energy. Now the only thing on his bench that's got any energy on is Articuno, and we all know that Articuno is about as useful against Pyroar as a chocolate teapot. And that is to say, not very useful at all. So I'm fairly well in command of this game. I've got my Raichu out. Energy is a tiny bit dodgy, because I've only got energy on the Raichu and the Pyroar, but hopefully I'll hit a Blacksmith in a minute and I can get rolling on that properly. You're seeing in this deck that I'm not always having supporters. I think I'm running 4N, 4 Juniper, 2 Colrus, 3 Tropical Beach, and 3 Fiery Torch. So there are only kind of 10 draw supporters. I've got Tropical Beach, but I haven't had turns to use it. And my Fiery Torch hasn't been great for me this game. Maybe that's a little low on supporters, but one thing I would say is the nature of Pyroar means that you generally can take some turns to Tropical Beach. So here he's taking some time with Dusknoir and really exposing one of the worst things about the Pokemon trading card game online, and that is the fact Dusknoir. Dusknoir sucks. I absolutely hate it, because you have to click Dusknoir usability, then click the Pokemon you're taking the damage off, then click the Pokemon the damage is going to, then click OK. It takes a long time, and that is why you're not going to probably see me testing any Dusknoir decks online, because unless I'm really desperate to put some time in with them and use them in a tournament, it just sucks. So some of you may be wondering why I'm showing you this particular deck. Against this particular deck, and the reason is it shows some cool stuff. It shows Froslass, which is a Pokemon you don't see used very often. It shows Articuno, and you'll see there he put Raichu on 10 and then did 80 with 10 left, and then did the spreading attack, getting the KO, which is kind of a cute way to do it, because then he's maximising his damage output. But it does show some alternate strategies with Pyroar Raichu, and you get to see things like Articuno and Froslass, cards you don't get to see very often. And it's not one of the worst games I've had. One of the things I like about PTCGO is that you get better players and better decks more often. I'm not going to be putting up a huge amount of these videos, but I'm going to be putting up the occasional one with lesser played decks, just because they're fun to see. And I think you can spend a quarter of an hour of your evening, well I hope at least, watching a deck which is slightly less played. Now you'll see there I again did the 60 without discarding with Pyroar. I don't want to waste my energy, and I'm in no hurry to get the KO. I've only got 3 prizes left, and to be honest, that particular time I couldn't get the KO anyway, so it would have been a complete waste to discard the energy. But what I'm saying is I'm taking it a little bit easy. His bench is not really threatening me at the moment, so why not just take a bit of time? Now what he does there is he paralyzes me. He doesn't want to get me to get the KO, and there's nothing I can really do. So Power Pad's a card which is kind of useful. I've popped it in there. I'm getting 1 Lysandre back. Really I'd like to get 2, but 1's in my hand. And Colrus, just because Colrus is amazing. There we go. Now I'm using my Super Rod here to get a bit of energy back, because, as I've said before, this deck does sometimes have energy problems. Because you're attacking with Pyroar so much, you can run out of energy. But I'm going to leave 2 in the discard because, of course, Blacksmith attacks 2 from my discard pile. So I want to try and make sure that if I've got a Blacksmith in my deck, unless I'm desperate, I want to keep 2 energy in the discard pile because I want to be able to use a Blacksmith in future. And then, of course, because I'm paralysed, I can use Tropical Beach, and this is what often happens, like I've said, when you're playing a Pyroar deck. He's got nothing to do, so he's going to paralyse me, and I'm looking at the Spiritomb again because I've got Computer Search in hand and I can't use, which is annoying. So he's going to paralyse me, and I'm going to have nothing to do, so I'm going to Tropical Beach. I love Tropical Beach in this deck, because you do inevitably, because you're playing a bit of a kind of a blocking, slowing down kind of deck, you are going to have situations where you've got nothing to do. So he puts Spiritomb up, and now I can get a KO with Pyroar. I've also got a boatload of supporters, just proving that I do indeed play enough supporters. I just couldn't grab them, and that's frustrating, but what can you do? Looking at my deck, I've got 15 cards remaining. I'm going to play a Colress for 9 here. I could Juniper and Finn my deck, but because I've got a Lysandre and a Computer Search in hand, they're just cards you can't get rid of. So, what I'm doing here is I'm thinning out my deck. I'm not going to need that Tropical Beach because it doesn't look like my opponent plays supporter. And then he concedes the victory. Because I'm going to knock out the Spiritomb, and then next turn I'm just going to Lysandre the Articuno and get the win. So I hope this video was interesting for you, playing a lesser known deck against a lesser known deck, seeing some cards you don't always see as often as you could. And hopefully you enjoyed it and you enjoyed the commentary. Any comments you've got, leave them below. Please don't forget to subscribe if you're enjoying the videos, and make sure you check out PTCG Radio, the podcast. Go on to Google and just search PTCG Radio. You'll find it easily. It's on iTunes and SoundCloud. Thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I'll be back soon with more videos.